Hello and welcome to the DTP podcast, the go-to podcast for everything concerning social housing, from regulation and compliance to finance and treasury management. I'm your host, Stuart, and in today's episode, we're looking at small housing association business and financial planning. We're joined by DTP senior consultant Andy Chapman, who's been supporting housing associations on business and financial matters for more than 30 years. Andy, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
So, Andy, just before we start, I'd just like to get a bit of background about you and what you've done in the social housing sector.
I've been working in the social housing sector, and this is going to show my age, for over 30 years. And realistically, I've worked with many housing associations from their initial inception in stock transfers, which I did over 60 stock transfers. And nowadays, I work with a number of associations, both big and small associations, that total around about 25, but also do other work with other housing associations throughout the year. I'm a dedicated bricks expert and part of a team of 3/4 people. And for myself, I've got a background originally in terms of creating financial spreadsheets for business plans. That moved away to using bricks software. I also am involved in putting together within spreadsheets development appraisals for smaller associations, and also doing reviews and various other bits, including looking at rents.
So you sound like you're ideally placed to look at business and financial planning for small housing associations. So I'm going to ask you a really, really basic question here. Why do they need a business plan?
Well, funnily enough, I'm just going through the process of FFRs for organisations that are above 1,000 units.
Just one quick thing, FFR, for our listeners, what does that stand for?
So FFR is what any association over 1,000 units has to fill in at the end of every June, which is a long-term financial forecasting return. And that's based on the business plan that's gone to board and is giving details to the regulator of the various statements forecast over 30 years. So you'll have the statement of comprehensive income, statement of financial forecasting, and also the statement of cash flow, alongside unit data and other compliance data that the regulator wants to see. Now, why they want this is because they want to see how you compare against other organisations in the business, and they can start looking at monitoring where people are having issues with high costs or issues around repairs and stuff like that. Now, the FFR is based on a 30-year business plan, and that is the expectation of the regulator in terms of the business planning. So that gives a good benchmark for anyone in the sector. Now, why do they pick 30 years? Mainly because funders dictate this, because they really want to see long-term financial plans. So they're funding and seeing the way that their funds can be repaid over the length of loans. But also there are other stakeholders that really want to see this, especially sort of investing stakeholders, but also tenants are interested in looking at these sort of things. So what we offer is really something where we put together business plans for small organisations alongside board and officers. So we need to understand the outputs that come from them. This then gives us a base platform to then analyse risks to the business, go through that with board and officers, and model those through the business plan as scenarios and stress tests. We can then work with the board and officers in terms of looking at how we would mitigate any failed elements that are within the stress tests. These elements can flow from anywhere, but certainly if there's a detailed risk register, which is something that we work with clients on, that helps to give us an area for looking at stress testing. But also on the mitigation side, it also can give us some ideas around mitigation, especially knowing the business. Funders are very keen on 30-year business plans. They like to see how robust the organisation is, not only in the next 4 or 5 years, but over the length of 30 years or more.
I think what you're saying there, it's critical for a number of stakeholders to have these business plans in place.
Correct.
So, Andy, just talk me through what you typically do when business planning for a small housing association, and what are some of the challenges you face?
So when we work with an organisation and the small associations that we work with, I think the biggest area that we go through, and actually it's the biggest challenge a lot of the time for smaller associations, is getting data. So we would work alongside the organisation to get the relevant data on stock, rents, service charges, any other forms of income, then look at cost structures. So we'd have the budgets that are set for the year and forecast forward with any material changes. We'd be talking to the officers around that. But one of the other challenges is that a lot of smaller organisations don't always have very good data on stock condition. And that's a key element because it's a big spend within the business plan. So anyone with really good stock condition, we get that information from, but we also can help organisations to start looking at how they can get good stock condition information, who they should be speaking to and who they should be getting on board to support them in terms of that. So when we're doing this, as I've mentioned, we work with lead officers, we go through all the data, and on top of that data, we overlay economic assumptions. Now, DTP produces economic assumptions for business planning for all size organisations in terms of CPI, RPI, cost growth above that, income growth in terms of rents and any other things. We offer that on a quarterly basis in line with the Bank of England's regular committee meetings. So we're doing that every year, and we provide that data to our clients every time we do it, every quarter. The challenges are around stock condition data, quality of data and availability of data. They are the biggest challenges that we find with a lot of small organisations. And we try and help as best we can in terms of how we can get that together and work with the client as much as possible. A lot of organisations, if they're just small organisations, will not buy bespoke software for development appraisals. We will help with that. We have a spreadsheet that we can work with organisations, and we do regularly with some of my smaller clients, looking at the development appraisal and actually instilling parameters and stuff for that. We're not one dimensional. We work with the organisation saying, okay, how many days do you want to use our time? And actually then working within those parameters to work on what the client requires, not what we require.
So you mentioned you use housing bricks. For our listeners who have not used bricks, can you explain what it is and how it is used to support business planning?
So bricks is a long-term financial planning tool. It's a bit of bespoke software that's being used within the housing sector. Now, there's over 300 users within the sector, so it's the biggest used tool in the sector. The next biggest will be spreadsheet-based ones that are either bespoke to the individual organisations, or there are other spreadsheets being provided by consultants. But really, Bricks is the market leader. It doesn't work on a spreadsheet basis. As I say, it's a separate piece of software, and it works on a sort of object-driven, hence the name Bricks. They're like building blocks. And you have various objects for stock numbers, rents, repairs-based costs, management costs, service costs, everything else, loans and everything. It's been there. It's well respected. Funders recognise it. The regulator recognises it. And it's been audited that many times over the years that even auditors are comfortable with the use of the Brick software.
So associations can feel quite reassured that when you're using that, it's going to do the job.
Yeah, it has its little foibles like any software, but we are in regular contact with Housing Bricks, and we keep in contact for any issues that arise from the software when they change objects, because sometimes they change an object and it doesn't do exactly what it should do. We get back in touch with them and say, okay, that's not right. We need to do something about that. But we also are very capable of doing workarounds that do exactly the same as what the client actually wants, but it may not look like it when you look at the object name.
Okay. So before this podcast, you mentioned to me that often small housing associations can look backwards rather than forwards when doing the planning. Just explain what you mean by this.
Well, most people think of accounts as being the financial accounts, and metrics are based on the financial accounts. Now, that's historic performance. So they're looking backwards at what they've done. And a lot of organizations get hung up because they have to go through the audit process and everything else by making sure the financial accounts are okay. But there is this perception that that's the be all and end all in terms of the way we look. And then you may have a 1-year budget, but you don't have much else. And you may have 1-year cash flows, or maybe a couple of years of budget and cash flows. But you're not looking any further forward and looking at what could happen over time. especially in terms of the pressures that are out there at the moment in terms of damp and mold and other repairs and various other cases. So a business plan should be there to actually help the organisation look forward rather than just getting their financial accounts and looking backwards. So when I talk about looking backwards, we have to look backwards because it shows what we've been, and certainly that informs where we go forwards. History does actually give us some information, but also there is other information out there and other things coming out of the regulator that we need to look at in terms of the future performance. There are other things such as zero carbon and EPCC ratings. They're key things on the agenda at the moment that you can look at in the future in terms of long-term financial planning.
So to sum it up, when you're doing your planning, look into the past, what you can learn from that, and look into the future about what's coming up.
Exactly.
Excellent. And finally, Andy, just outline how DTP can support a housing association wanting to look at its business and financial planning.
So we have a bespoke team that deal with over 50 clients, both large and small, on bricks and other financial issues. The team itself has vast experience in financial planning and have worked in the sector for many years in finance teams. We have supported on funding from our treasury team as well. So we do treasury work. We are known to build relationships with clients for many years due to the way we work alongside clients and support in whatever ways we can. And I think that's a big way that we work that we feel proud of. And we do not prescribe the work we do. We discuss and fit with our clients' needs and requirements.
Thanks very much, Andy. And I'm sure our listeners can get in touch directly with you if they want some more information.
That's correct, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you. And thanks to our listeners for joining us for our podcast. If you're keen to learn more about social housing, make sure to check out our social media channels. Thank you.
Thank you.